Hi folks, thanks for joining us on this latest episode. Celtic have now got minutes at time of recording to pull at least one, if not two rabbits out the hat to do away with some of the negativity around what's been a shambolic transfer window. However, there's still football to be played and Celtic travel to Pittodrie on Saturday for a lunchtime kick-off against Aberdeen. So in main, that's what we're going to cover, but we can't not talk about some of the ongoing issues. This is Tino with the Countdown to Kick-Off show, joined here by James and Paddy. James, before we get to all the other stuff, your initial thoughts ahead of that game against Aberdeen?
Well, just I have to say, you're panicking. We've got 6 hours to go. Get ages.
I know.
So
it's on
let's
me.
all calm down. Yeah, I mean, always one of your favourite fixtures. Pittodrie away and always tricky, no matter what. So they'll need to be at it and on it. I know, obviously, turmoil there, Robson going, which is, you always feel sad for it, but the results speak for themselves. But Robson was always a firm favourite. So I say the weekly show, whatever happens tonight, tomorrow is day one. It's the day one of winning this title. So Rodgers will pull the players together, get them all motivated, let them know where they stand and what they need to do to get over the line. And it starts on Saturday.
You say tomorrow's day one for Rodgers and the players. Will Rodgers be there okay?
I think he'll go through the weekend anyway. If he was to leave, I think he would go through the weekend. But I think conversations will be happening next week. Yeah.
Yeah, if not already. Paddy, to try and stay focused for now on Aberdeen. So obviously Barry Robson lost his job just the other day. They drew one each with Dundee at Pittodrie the other night. And I think from Aberdeen's point of view, they've been trying to be as patient as they possibly can with Barry Robson. He's clearly a well-liked guy, clearly a popular guy there. But the writing's been on the wall for a while. I think they kept him in place up to that League Cup final against Rangers to give him his cup final, to use that expression. But by and large, they've had a couple of decent results. They beat Frankfurt, didn't they, in their last Conference League game? They beat Hearts not that long ago. But over the piece, it's not been good enough, and it's little wonder that he's now gone.
It's a shame for him. I really like Barry Robson. I think that the writing, as you say, was on the wall. It did make sense that it was coming to an end for him. And I think that fair play to Aberdeen, because they did persist with it. They did give him that chance. I think we're very quick to just cut loose very early in this league. But Robson was given a fair crack at the whip, and I think he done really well for them when he got the job last year, and kind of steadied the ship after Jim Goodwin, and obviously what Stephen Glass had left before as well. And I think that there was high hopes. A diehard fan and like really looking to kind of just push them on to the next level. It was a good appointment from them, and a good run in the League Cup, absolutely. But ultimately, I think what's got them out this year is having a squad capable of the demand. Because I think that the performances in Europe, absolutely, you could just tell the adrenaline was pushing the players up to another level. But your bread and butter's a league, and they've not been able to keep up with that. So I still think this game's actually going to be a tricky one. I always feel that when you lose a manager, you've got a point to prove. So it makes it a little bit harder for us, in my opinion.
I think it does. I'd rather Barry Robson was still there, with all due respect, because you've now got that group of players trying to prove themselves to a new manager, whoever's going to come in, and they should be fired up to bring more than they've brought for Barry Robson. I think you're right, though. It's a very valid point about European football, because out with Celtic and Rangers, the other clubs in the country, by and large, aren't used to balancing group stage European football with the domestic stuff. And it seems just a stretch too far, because Aberdeen's got a good squad. I'm having a wee look before I come on, and you've got the experience of Graham Shinney, you've got Jamie McGrath, very talented player. You've got other guys, Duke and Majowski up top. You've got the guy Sockler up top, Devlin at the back, Leighton Clarkson, James. There's a whole host of good bodies there, and it's just a wee bit surprising that after what was a very good start, Robson hasn't been able to get more out of this group.
No, and they've had moments as well, obviously. A couple of games in Europe that did well, Frankfurt, for example, and obviously that League Cup run. So it would suggest that he's got something as a manager. If you've got a good group of players and they're not getting a tune out of them, then you can point to the manager and say, well, it's just the manager. But the manager's be able to do it sometimes, so you can't just say he's not got it or he's not had it. So yeah, maybe some of the fingers need to point towards the players, but end of the day, it is what it is as far as Celtic are concerned, and we've just got to be ready for what would be a fairly wounded animal coming at us.
Yeah, we'll get back to Aberdeen in just a moment, but I do want to focus on Celtic at this stage in the recording in terms of, I'll start with you, James. Where do you think the players' heads are at? Because they see all the noise that we see. You know, they're not sheltered from this. They're not locked away in a room. You know, all the noise and anxiety that you've got from Celtic fans on social media, particularly about, honestly, what I think is a deplorable window. You know, there's some different comments coming in saying not as bad as you think and all that stuff. I think it's been a disgusting transfer window so far. As you say, still 6 hours to go. But if we're feeling negative about it, intense about it, and concerned about what it means for the rest of the season, the players are the same. They're young guys, they're on social media, they see these messages. How do you think it might impact them on Saturday's game? So, you know, early kickoff, 12:30 in Pittodrie, not even 48 hours from now. How do you think they'll feel in approaching this?
Any transfer window where a player's maybe under pressure for his position that closes without any changes or improvements to his position, he's got to see as an opportunity to galvanise his spot and say that's mine, and I'm going to make sure that chat's not here in the summer. So they should see it as a motivating tool. I questioned on the post-match on Saturday how strong or how the lack of strength in the Celtic squad's mental toughness, and the question of mental strength rather. Because when those penalties didn't win from Palma, the fans felt it. They gave it to the stadium, and the players felt it, and they wilted. You know, so I don't know how many players in our squad have got the mental strength to be Celtic players. You know, you may be talking 5 or 6 guys, and the others have got to acquire it and acquire it quick, or it's going to be time up at Celtic.
Yeah, I do think a lot of that chimes true, and I do think we lack leaders, Paddy. I think there's guys that in themselves are focused individuals and committed to what they do, but I think you need a bit more to play at Celtic and to succeed at Celtic. And I think, you know, it's often the case when we lose 1 or 2 leaders. When you lose Callum McGregor for any length of time, and now when we've lost Carter Vickers again, no word on that, but the suggestion is he's going to be out injured for a spell. He's one of the few leaders in the team, and he won't be there. How much do you think that impacts this current side, Paddy?
A lot. I really do. I think that we've seen a lot of the performances lately, especially like kind of scraping through games before going up to the 2 defeats that we had with Killie and Hearts, that we were actually seeing moments of real worry with Joe Hart and his commanding of his own area, commanding of his team. There was moments where you were doubting if he was like at the level required, and obviously I've still got my suspicions on that. We need leaders, we really do. If we lose McGregor, it's even harder for this team. So I think that if some of these guys need to stand up, I think also our coaches need to be able to be there to help that as well. The experiences within the coaching team for what they've won over the last decade, especially. There's guys there that knows what it takes, and I just think that's what this whole squad should be all about. They should have that winning mentality. I think that you would kind of identify those that were shirking out the challenge already by now. I really do. I think that, you know, McGregor has a big part to play for these guys. So I'm not too worried about that. I look at the Palma thing. As I said, I think first and foremost, you know, he's taking the step to go and take the second penalty. That's courageous, but you need to go and score it. And he'll learn from that. I really do think he will. But we need to rally behind these players more than anything, especially if this is the squad we're going to have for the running.
Yeah, and as we know, Pittodrie can be one of the tougher venues to go. You know, there's a reduced allocation these days, Paddy. You can confirm that. There won't be as many fans in attendance as before, and it's a tough game, regardless what shape Aberdeen are in. It's a game where you need to stand up and be counted and show what you've got. And Paddy, I'll stay with you for now in terms of the defensive part of the lineup. We may lose a couple of these bodies tonight. You know, there's a suggestion that we've accepted an offer from Serie A for Bernabe. He might be off. We know that Lecce have been in for Lager Bielka, and the club seem to be doing a bit of a tug of war with him at this moment in time based on Carter Vickers' injury. So those two lads might not be available. I'd suggest they won't be. What do you think the back four will be? Keeping in mind Greg Taylor's also out.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we move Scales across, and it's maybe Stephen Welsh and Nawrocki that come in the centre half positions with Johnson on the right, or do we try Ralston at left back? But again, talk about putting players under pressure in a situation like this. Tony Ralston's hardly kicked the ball this season. Stephen Welsh has had a couple of injuries. And then just to go and toy with the mind of someone like Lagerbielke, I just think's deplorable management. I really do. Hung out to dry almost by the team in terms of, he's not cutting it at the club. We're looking for potential suitors to come and get him already after X amount of months. And then to go and just say, actually, we might need you. A slap in the face to the guy and his professional development. Albeit, yeah, he's contracted by us, but I just think it's very, very poor management once again.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. And who knows where his head's at? He's a very young player. He's made the move to Scotland. It's not worked out. And I just don't know what he'll be thinking at this moment in time. James, I think there's been a wee bit of potentially mismanagement with regard to Tony Ralston. And on that basis, I mean the fact that looking ahead to Saturday, no Greg Taylor we know for sure. Probably no Bernabe. And it'll be another now at left back. We talked for a while about the midfield lottery, didn't we? Who was going to be that third midfielder out with McGregor and O'Reilly. Now it's the left back lottery. Is it going to be Scales moving over? Is it going to be Tony Ralston playing out his natural side? Is it going to be young Mitchell Frame, who we've not seen off since the Feyenoord game? And I think there was an opportunity there at the weekend. Why not bring Tony Ralston off the bench for Bernabe against Ross County? Maybe kind of with a nod to what might have happened in the days that followed. Do you think there's just an ongoing disjointed thing going on at Celtic here?
I mean, I don't think that kind of move, Bernabe for Ralston, happens until the game's secure, and the game is never secure until the final whistle. So it would be a wee bit of a luxury, as bad as Bernabe was. Are you thinking Bernabe will be gone or just not picked?
Gone. I think there's a suggestion he's going to Italy.
Exactly. Well, I think that would be something. I'll just update my team. My team sheets are all over the place. I don't think he'll move Scales over. I think he's shown his stubbornness on that one, Rodgers, and he's justified. If we went Welsh, Nawrocki, Scales, which is kind of what I was leaning towards on last Saturday, Paddy, with CCV instead of Welsh, and Rodgers didn't do it, it would mean we've got no centre halves on the bench. I really don't think Lagerbielke should be on the bench or should be a Celtic player come midnight tonight. It's horrendous management, and Rodgers must have a hand in that. That's squad stuff, live, who's my available player stuff. So Rodgers must be saying, you're leaving me short. Maybe he's saying, you're leaving me short, get me a centre half and he can go. And the recruitment team saying, well, we're not good enough to do that, so that's not happening. And Rodgers has said, well, if you can't get me someone, I need to keep him. But I'm with Paddy entirely. Messing the boy about like that, having him, ready to sign on the line for Lecce, and then just taking it away from him. At the end of the day, what he's seeing there is a chance to play football, and it's been taken off him. It's shocking management.
Yeah, and his head can't be in a space to then potentially feature for Celtic weekend. Brendan Rodgers spoke in the last, week to 10 days now to say that from his experience, when a player decides they want to go, generally speaking, you should let them go, regardless of contract situations or whatever else. And that's whether it's a Matt O'Reilly that potentially wanted a move to Atletico Madrid, or for different reasons, a Lagerbielke who just wants to go and play football, as you say. And I don't think it makes sense to keep anybody that's not in the right headspace. He knows he's not wanted at Celtic, so how can you possibly expect to get the best out of him as an individual? Getting back to the lineup, though, for Pittodrie, I don't think we see Scales making that move across. I think he's been one of the few consistencies about Celtic's lineup this season. You've got Joe Hart in goals, you've got Scales at centre half, and you've probably got Kyogo up top through the middle as your ever presence. Callum McGregor, of course, as well. So you've got that kind of spine, and I think he'd be very reluctant to change that. But it does beg the question then, that leaves us, if Bernabe's not around, it leaves us with Mitchell Frame, who's also not been seen, and Tony Ralston. There is a suggestion in the comments from Gary Melrose, might be time to play three at the back. I don't think that happens either. I think you mentioned that Rodgers has got a stubbornness when it comes to Liam Scales. He's also got a stubbornness in terms of how he plays football. And I don't think we're going to see any shift from the 4-3-3 that we usually go with. James, would you like to make a call as to who the left back will be before we move to midfield?
I thought I managed to duck that the last question around, but you came right back at me. I'd like it to be Frame. I'd like to see what he's got. It's a bit of a baptism of fire, having your first full debut away in Aberdeen. It's probably Ralston, but that just gives me all sorts of problems. I love Ralston as a player. I love his attitude, but it just stymies us, having a right-footed left back. It stymies us in terms of attack. He'll be strong in the tackle. He'll be good positionally, but just in terms of coming out with the ball. So I would go with Frame, but I think it'll probably be Ralston.
Right. I think with Ralston as well. Just I'm pretty sure as well when he was in the youth setup and going through that. There was a lot of competition in the back line, and there was a few bad injuries in the left-hand side, and he was given quite a few games out at left back. So he has kind of played there before, but he's nowhere near match ready for that. So he has a little bit of experience at the left-hand side, but I don't know if he's gonna be tested there. I'd like to see Frame as well. I think why not? Natural left back would make more sense, but like you said, I think it is a bit of a big one for him to come into.
Yeah, often when we do the countdown to kick-off shows, you can fairly accurately predict what's going on. I've genuinely no idea. There's a few possibilities, but I've really no idea. And James obviously answering it like a true politician, Paddy, just dancing around in it, rewording the question, asking me what I think, all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, between the three of us, I don't think we've managed to find any sort of answer. Paddy, I'll stay with you, Paddy, for the easy one. The midfield three stays the same, doesn't it?
It does, aye. I don't think we're budging that. I think what we kind of need to look at for this game going forward, and I know we'll go into it a bit more, is just the transition between our defence to the midfield three. I think that was missing on Saturday. So yeah, it stays the same, but I think the guys need to step up a bit.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt. I think we all need to, and I think regardless of what's going on off the park, and I've spoken about the players' frame of minds, they're professional footballers. They're very well paid to go and do a good job, and we need to see a response from Saturday. Saturday was particularly poor for a variety of reasons, and they'll have the opportunity to put that right up at Pittodrie. And I think just everybody, including your best players, your McGregors and otherwise, everyone needs to lift their levels and bring an extra, whatever it is, 10, 15, 20%. Let's look at the front line, Paddy. And again, it's maybe not all that clear now. You've got Kyogo, who will be the starting centre forward, kind of, because he's the only one there. But then in the wings, we had pretty sketchy performances from Abada and Louis Palmer at the weekend. Nicholas Kuhn, a lot of excitement about him. He made his debut, wasn't really able to show much, on the day. Two wingers might not be at the club. Strong suggestions that James Forrest is on the road out, and maybe we'll catch that after the Aberdeen stuff. That was a surprise for me. And Mikey Johnson looks like he might be going to West Brom on loan. We know that Yang's obviously away with Maeda and Tillio, the other winger at the Asian Cup, and Tillio is going to Melbourne City. Whole lot of stuff going on there. But Paddy, what two wingers of the available ones we've got do you think get the nod?
I think I think we see Kuhn come in, to be honest. I think he starts for me, and I think we see if there's no movement, I think we see Abada out the right, and then potentially just chop it up with Palmer maybe coming on, because I think it's a really tough one for Louis Palmer after Saturday, but also I think it's an opportunity for a new winger to come in and make a claim after the performance we've seen from Palmer. And hopefully gets Palmer on his toes going forward, because we can't have players missing two penalties, guys. We really can't, and I think that it'll be a lesson learned from him. Just that we need to work a bit harder to make sure that position's his.
Yeah. So front three for you, Paddy: Abada, Kyogo, and Kuhn on the left hand side. Yeah. James, what do you think of that? Is it something you'd be going for?
I mean, I fairly much chuck those three in a tombola, because you could drop Abada after last Saturday, you could drop Palmer after last Saturday, and obviously want to see what Kuhn can do. But I think Rodgers will stick with it. I think there's a lot of kind of disruption, both in terms of the squad and enforced changes, left back for Taylor and centre half for CCV. And I think he'll want to have some consistency elsewhere. I think he's going to go Abada Palma again. Abada's performance last Saturday was one of the worst I've seen. Just shoulders down, didn't want to be there. And I know everyone can maybe read too much into that, but it just didn't look like he was enjoying himself at all. I'm surprised we haven't had movement on Abada by now. I thought he'd have been making these moves. If he doesn't want to be there, then don't be there. Go and be happy somewhere. But with the lack of moves, then we need to rely on him. We need to get him up to speed. We need to get him game time and get him back to doing what he can do. You know, I've been a big fan of Abada since he signed. So I think for that reason, he's going to play and try and get some assists and goals back in his game. And Palma, the enigma that is Palma, I just think Rodgers is going to give him the nod just to get him back firing again. I think Kuhn will come on, at the first available opportunity for one of them. But we're now, bizarrely, with all the wingers we've got in our squad, we've got one winger on the bench in Kuhn. You haven't got James Forrest, you haven't got Mikey Johnson, you haven't got Yang, you haven't got Tilio, you haven't got Maida. So the squad mismanagement is just unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's based, of course, on these guys going ahead with their suggested moves out of the club that we'll catch a wee bit more than we've touched on. I suppose, Paddy, also leaves you a wee bit of lack of depth on the bench all of a sudden. It's just bizarre. It's, James mentions the mismanagement of the squad, and it's all over the place. We talked about the cliche of finishing the window stronger than you started, and that's certainly up for debate, or is it? It's maybe not even a debate. But it does mean that when the manager's making his decision, what can you name now? Is it 9 or 10 subs, something like that? When he's naming his 20-man pool for Pittodrie, he's probably going to have to throw in a couple more kids. So, back in recent times, you've always had Turnbull on the bench. You've had a couple of your wingers. You've had James Forrest more often than not providing backup. Lager-Belka if needed at centre-half, all these things. And now, albeit they're not the best options, but they're options all the same and they're experienced professionals. You don't have that. So you go up to Pittodrie, he might be able to fudge together a decent 11. But if we pick up a couple of injuries, and the way Celtic's luck's going just now, there's every possibility of that. If we pick up a couple of knocks and he looks down the bench to see who the game changers are or who can, shore things up, there might not be a lot of options for him.
True, and I think this is, you would kind of hope that if we're allowing players to leave this window, that you would make sure that there's replacements ready to come in. Do we think that's going to happen? Probably not. I'd have been the one that I think is going to go over the line tonight, and I think for me that's it. I keep hearing rumours of left back, but I think we've left it again far too late. The option of Kurzawa as well. I've heard obviously Galatasaray have come in as well to look at him, but again, a very, very good player on a lot of money at Paris Saint-Germain and just had a really bad injury a couple of seasons ago. And I think that he would have been a bit of a risk in terms of is he going to get back to full speed with us? Is he going to want to get back to full speed? But you don't say no to a player at that level. I think he's a great option. But again, have we just left it too late? And a couple of other clubs have now come sniffing around the same market that Celtic are looking at. I think we look at the Norwich thing with Sidney van Hooijdonk. I've seen a few people saying we don't know anything about him. I think finishing third as the Eredivisie goal scorer last season and getting a move to Bologna is making really, really good steps towards a strong career. It's not to be sniffed at as well. We just seem to be slowest finger to try and get the deals over the line and just getting picked by teams left, right and centre in the final days again. And it's just not good enough. It's not good enough.
No. And it's bizarre that we just spring to life here, in the last... I'm saying spring to life, that's probably doing them more credit than deserved, but they've started to try and take action in the last couple of days. And it really begs the question, what the hell have the recruitment team been doing in September and October and November and December and so far in January? It beggars belief that all they can come up with is Nicholas Kuhn, one winger from Rapid Vienna, and what looks to be a really uninspiring loan move for your man Ida from Norwich. Tell you what we'll do, we'll wrap up the Aberdeen chat and we'll spend maybe 10 to 15 minutes on the bigger picture. James, in terms of Aberdeen, we've touched on where they're at. They've lost Barry Robson. They've only had one League One in 5. I think it was away to Ross County. They are 8th in the table, and for a team that would absolutely have designs on finishing top 3, if not top 4 at worst, it's not been good enough for them. And we've mentioned the kind of wounded animal thing. They're no longer with their manager. Do you think we'll see a response from them? And how do you think they'll come at it on Saturday? And also, who's taking their team? Who's their manager?
Don't know. You'd normally go for like Tony Docherty or something like that. He's otherwise occupied. Could be a shout for a manager, Tony Docherty in there. Maybe not long enough at Dundee, but obviously a long association with Aberdeen. Who's taking their team? Absolutely no idea. No clue whatsoever. I don't
Ian
see
Jess.
who's in the...
Ian Jess.
Ian Jess. Scott Booth. Still kicking a ball. I don't know who the experienced seniors are around the club, around Aberdeen at the moment. As for the response we get, if you can't thread it together with... I'd have to say Robson would be a motivator as a manager. And if you can't get going for him, then what are you going to be like when you're rudderless? Celtic should see this as an opportunity. It'll be tough, of course, but we should be seen as an opportunity to lay down a marker and have a big win on Saturday against a team that has just been so poor this season and hopefully continues to be on Saturday.
Yeah, they're 8th for a reason, and Barry Robson's been sacked for a reason. It's just, the evidence is there that they've been poor all season, more or less. I'll just pin you on your scoreline prediction at this moment in time then, James.
2-0 Celtic.
2-0. Paddy, what you going with?
2-1.
2-1. I'd be something close to that. I'm going to agree with Paddy. I think it'll be... Celtic aren't expressing themselves at this moment in time. They're not playing in a free-flowing kind of manner, but I think we should have enough on the day. Listen, if you don't have enough against Aberdeen, you can call it a day. You can forget the title. So we need to go and win there. They should be focused enough to do so. And let's hope they get the 3 points regardless what the scoreline is. I'm going to bring up a question that Brian Harkins put in just while we were chatting. So Brian says, a genuine question, is this board setting up Brendan Rodgers to fail? Because Dermot Desmond brought back Brendan Rodgers over the heads of the board. What do you think of that, first of all, Paddy? I would argue that Brian's right. They're certainly not giving him the tools to succeed, are they?
Again, I think we just shoot ourselves in the foot where they're not letting a lot of information out in terms of what deals have tried to go over the line. And I just think for me, no, you can't run a football club like that. I don't think that's the case, Brian. I see where you're coming from. I wouldn't be surprised if Rodgers was to come out in a tell-all down the line and say something of that ilk, but I would like to believe that that's not the case at all. There's too much at stake to toy about with your football club like that, too much at stake. But then we do look at the state of our window in January. I would say no on that. Yeah.
James, I wouldn't say, specifically the club have set Rodgers up to fail, but it comes down to the fact that you've got this absentee landlord situation in the shape of Dermot Desmond. He's calling the shots. I think as we speak, he's on the golf course. There's a Pro-Am tournament somewhere in, I don't know where, Dubai or something, and he's having a lovely time teeing off. Whereas his plaything, his club are scrambling about, looking for last minute deals and just looking as disjointed as we have for some time. So I don't think the aim from Dermot Desmond, and folk that advise him is to set Rodgers up for failure. But what you've got, James, is a situation where Rodgers is Desmond's guy, Lawwell is also Desmond's guy, and the two of them, let's not kid on, it's pretty clear from the first time around when Rodgers exited, the two guys don't get on. And I don't think anything dramatic's happened in the years that have passed to suggest that they're now best buddies. I think that frostiness still exists. It was maybe okay for a time back in the summer when Rodgers came back in. Sure, him and Peter had a couple of coffees and it was all good. But then people just revert to type. Rodgers will go back to being who he is as a football guy. Peter Lawwell goes back to being who he is as a business guy, and Celtic's hands-off non-exec director. And I just think, so yeah, the question, set up to fail. Not quite as dramatic as that as such, but you can see why the signs of not quite failure yet, but certainly the division seems to be seeping in.
I think Brian's called it spot on. I think that's exactly what's happening. Dermot Desmond wanted Rodgers. The Laws wanted Maresca. Dermot Desmond wins that argument, but then Desmond helicopters away and doesn't implement any procedures that here's what you need to deliver for this guy because I promised him that to get him to come to the club. He's just left it for, unfortunately, it's Michael Nicholson's carrying the can, but Mark Lawwell carrying the can in recruitment. And the nepotism, obviously, at Celtic creates that channel back to Lawwell. Now, I know Lawwell's not an exec at Celtic these days, but he is highly influential in every single department. So he can have soft power at Celtic that has big effects, and that impacts on Brendan Rodgers' ability to do his job. It doesn't change as long as Desmond's the owner, to the point where I'm not renewing my season ticket until there's serious, professional, grown-up adults running Celtic, whether that's under Desmond or another. I'd recommend any Celtic fan to take a year out and see where we are the year after that.
Yeah, do you know, as dramatic as it sounds, I've seen and heard some other people calling for action because it's the only way Celtic will sit up and take notice. You know, it's the hit them in the pocket type approach. So I'm not advocating getting up with the pitchforks or anything like that, but don't buy the merchandise, don't buy the season ticket, don't buy the 3-match packages, all those kind of things. And if that starts to hit dramatically, then the shareholders have got a responsibility to then ask a question, you know, of the board and say, what's going on here? And something needs to change. And, you know, it kind of harks back to the title of this week's podcast episode. You know, if nothing changes, then nothing changes. If we keep doing the same things, we'll keep getting the same results, which is, generally speaking, uninspiring signings and early exits in Europe. And that's the bottom line. And that's not to become entitled or complacent, because I'm sure someone will remind us that Celtic have won, 12 league titles out of 13, something like that. Absolutely, credit where it's due for that. But Celtic, in their position of strength, should be winning, you know, 9 times out of 10, 12 times out of 13 the league title. But we're not seeing progress. And that's a frustrating thing. You know, as a supporter, you can generally ride the ups and downs of football so long as over the piece you're going up the way. You're seeing a wee bit more progress in Europe. You're bringing youth players through. There's exciting things happening on and off the park. And we're not seeing that, James. And I think that's where all this frustration's coming out. You know, you're hearing the buzz at the end of the game there at the weekend. And I think there's frustration for so many reasons among the supporters.
Yeah, and we're not entitled to win every game. We're not entitled to, you know, win every tournament we enter. We know that. But we are entitled that everyone at Celtic should be doing their absolute best, and people in the positions at Celtic should be the best within our class, within our part in the football world kind of thing. And it's not. It's miles away. And you're paying directors wild money. You're paying them EPL money to turn in performances like they're turning in. If our footballers had been long gone. So the frustration is palpable. It is not isolated. It is throughout the fan base. I'd say you're looking at about, of who I speak to, about 80-20. 80% of people are pissed off and 20% of people are saying, okay, it'll be fine and all that stuff. And then obviously I hope it'll be fine, hope we can get through this season. But they've got my money for this season and they're not getting it next year, and they won't be getting it until they get their act together.
Yeah. Paddy, what's your own thoughts on that? You know, James is saying 80-20. What do you think?
I'd probably go more 90-10, to be honest. I totally see where you're coming from, James. I really do. I think though, I think it's quite a statement to turn around and say that this board are setting our manager up to fail. I can't go with that at all. I think we've set ourselves up to fail in terms of the recruitment that we do have in place. It's people that are not up to the job. They're not up to the level required. And I think back to Mark Lawwell coming in and actually looking at, you know, the signings we made under Ange. You know, the success rate just disappeared. The success rate that we've seen from the early signings under Ange Postecoglou disappeared under this guy's leadership. So I think it's quite a bold statement for us to turn around and say that they're setting up a manager to fail. Maybe they're doing it without realising they're doing it. I'd say that that's more likely to be the case. I don't think we run a football club that way, as bad as this is at the moment. And it definitely is something that we do need to address. Stuff will need to be brought up, especially winning the league or not this year for me. Are they expecting protests at Celtic Park this week? I wouldn't be surprised if not. That's where they've put us at this point just now, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's blowing up the Shark as we speak.
Maybe so. James, you're saying 80-20, Paddy, saying potentially closer to 90-10, i.e. 90% of fans unhappy, 10% okay with things. I think all of us through what we do here at the Celtic Exchange, we speak to a lot of fans, whether it's our own mates or folks in comments or Twitter engagement. I'm not speaking to anybody that's happy the way things are going. I've not had anybody saying, listen, take it easy, the squad's okay, we'll still be fine. Everybody I speak to is hitting the roof and really stressed out. There's a lot of stressed folk in the comments, and I understand that because I think it's just a reflection on how we feel. There's, yes, the facts of the matter are right now we're 5 points clear and potentially 2 points if Rangers win their game in hand, but that's not good enough, particularly when you look at the fact that 2-3 months ago we were coasting. But even if you just take that separate part of things aside, I've mentioned all these areas that just aren't good at the club. There seems unrest, there's players, Lagerbielke, I'm thinking, potentially getting mistreated. It looks like Marco Tellio's gone back to Melbourne and saying that he didn't, I think the quote from his coach is saying he didn't have fun at Celtic. Now, I'm not sure how much you want to read into the lines there, but there's guys that aren't happy from a playing point of view, and that happens when you mismanage the squad, James, when you get, I don't know what it was, 32-man squad, some guys featuring, some guys not, but a lot of unhappy people at Lennoxtown. As I say, we're out of Europe again at the first possible opportunity. We're not bringing through youth, and even the youth that we bring through, Rocco Vata, he's greeting about something else and thinking he's better than he is. And there's very little, from the outside looking in, there's very little that's going well at this moment in time.
Yeah, and I'm generally a very positive person, and it's quite frustrating that you can't really see any green shoots anywhere because nothing changes. Your title was spot on Monday. Nothing changes if nothing changes, and they're not changing. But the only thing I'd say about earlier on, and that I think is deliberate, they've done it before. They've done it to Rodgers first time round, and my opinion was it was mostly Rodgers, maybe a bit of Lol. That maybe changed to mostly Lol, bit of Rodgers. I think it's almost entirely Lol now. You can see how they operate. They don't need to be, in your face. They just need to be looking like they're not performing, and they're certainly looking like they're not performing. So, I don't know. My best hope, really, from this point until the end of May is that Rodgers stays, galvanises the squad, gets us over the line, and we have a complete overhaul in the summer, and we start to put in professional structures. Strachan did a review on Celtic. I think it was just the youth side of things. Whatever happened to that? Because it's the exact same process, exact same managers, the exact same lack of players coming through. So did Strachan do a really good report actually? And they went, that's going to cost money, or that's going to make us look bad. We'll just say nothing about that and do nothing about that, which is worse.
Yeah. You'll see various comments coming in. What I'd say is we're kind of getting towards the last kind of section of the recording here. We'll probably go for about 5 minutes more. If anyone wants to ask a specific question, please do so. We'd love to address it and try and catch that before we finish up. I'll just give a wee roundup while that's happening of the latest kind of rumours and suggestions transfer-wise, and it's mostly exits from the club. So you'll have seen the headline, I'm sure, that it looks like David Turnbull's going to Cardiff City for around about £2 million, which I think it makes sense for all concerned. So we wish him well, but it's not working out for David Turnbull at Celtic. But the surprising element is that James Forrest might join him. Now, I think he signed a pretty decent extended contract not long ago. Paddy, you might have more memory than me on that. But say again?
3-year deal. A year and a half ago, 3-year deal. He's halfway through it.
And I just wonder who matches that. But maybe James Forrest just wants to play. He's 32. He knows his best days are behind him and he wants to play football. And if so, I can understand that. He barely features and he might go out, but it would be a bit of a surprise. Mikey Johnson to West Brom on loan. I think that just seems to be the way it's going with Mikey. Marco Tellio, we've mentioned, he's confirmed as back at Melbourne City for the rest of the season. Lagerbielke to Lecce. Apparently the deal is still live, but questions whether that will happen before 11:30 tonight. Adam Ida, we've seen all the chat. We know he's in Glasgow. He arrived last night, and I think he's probably signed already. And it's just a timing thing from Celtic. How can we possibly announce this without everyone going nuts? How can we almost leak this out without it creating a fuss online and a drama across Twitter?
They want to do it with at least one or maybe two other players beside him, and then it absorbs it a wee bit. which is, I really hope the boy comes in and does well. Of course, anyone that signs for Celtic, I always hope that, he's not had a CV that says he's going to blow the place away, but, you never know. But that's how poor that signing is in terms of the calibre. I mean nothing against the boy, just in terms of the calibre where he's coming from, that Celtic aren't proud enough of it to make a noise about it. They're hoping to get one or two others beside him, and then it's 3 signing deadline day, all that stuff. It is so bad.
Paddy, it's terrible. It's got to the point where even when you are making signings, you're almost embarrassed to put them out, as James says there, and that's a hell of a place to be, isn't it? How has it got to this?
We've discussed it. It's poor management. It's scraping the barrel in the final hours, the final 3 days. I think that's where we've seen our most rumours pop up, and we're trying to speak to this team, we're trying to speak to that team. Is it a sign of where we're at as a club, that we need to wait till the bigger teams have effectively done their business? Possibly. Is it manageable still? Is it something that we can, get things in place before that comes to that point? I think so. I generally believe that we get our players scouted, we get the ones that we think are going to make a difference to this team. We sound it out, we sound the deal out, we make them aware, like, listen, we know that bigger clubs might come in for you, playing in a better league, but the deal is here, and I just don't think there's any of that for Celtic. I think it's like, right, who's available? Somebody let us know. Put out a call. Anyone know any agents? I'm surprised we've not contacted Dudu Dahan. I really am. Honest to God, it's pathetic.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But again, we've used these terms, but when you're out scouting and recruiting, you must be player-led. Find the best player, the guy that meets the criteria in terms of ability, position, wages, age, all that stuff. Don't find the agent and say, how's it going, Dudu Dahan, Carl Starfelt's agent? Any players kicking around? We just cannot be taking that approach. And that's amateur. We're meant to be a Champions League club. We're a multi-million pound turnover business, and we're just doing things in a haphazard fashion. James, there's a good question that's come in from Mazar. Mazar's a good friend of the show, and we'll finish on that. Before we do so, there's a fella called Martin in the comments, and Martin has been grating his eyes out for 40-odd minutes. Everything, Martin, you're killing him is negative. Yous are talking this, yous are talking that. But Martin says, are you really going to give up your season ticket? Are you a man of your word? He thinks you're talking nonsense, James. So what does it take for you to give up your ticket this time round?
What do you think, Jake? I'll do it, yes or no?
At 100%. I'll tell you, Martin, he will give it up if things don't improve.
That's your answer, Martin. The boys that know me know that I'll do it, no problem at all. I just think I'm not turning up for that next year, and I'm not turning up at all until things change, regime change or exec change, boardroom change, whatever it may be, anything that brings professionalism to Celtic. So, yeah, Martin, there's your answer. I'll not be here next season as long as things stay the same. Still in the podcast, though. I
think Martin wants your ticket, but he says, just to follow up, on here you said you'll give up your season ticket. Are you going to keep your word? Why aren't you answering that point? Here it is, Martin. We're answering the point. Please stop grating, though. Your negativity is killing us. So just to go to Mazar's question, James, I'll find it as we get to it. But basically, it's along the lines of Brendan Rodgers. It's the concern that he might walk again. Now, you can certainly debate Brendan Rodgers walking first time around and whether it was right or wrong, and I think we all agree it was wrong. But you could also see, based on what we know now, there's reasons why that he's walked last time around, and it could happen again. So to quote Mazar, he says, are you guys worried about Rodgers leaving during the season at any stage if a job in the EPL comes up, rather than waiting until the summer? From my point of view, just to answer that quickly, I think he might walk whether it's to go to another job or not. Brendan Rodgers doesn't need this. Brendan Rodgers is a very wealthy man, picked up big dough at Liverpool, big money at Leicester, decent money, very decent money at Celtic first time around as well. He fully intended to take a year out the game. That was absolutely the plan. Dermot got on the blower and has somehow convinced him, and I'd love to hear what that was, because he's clearly sold Brendan Rodgers on a vision. I know you're looking to take time out, Brendan. Here's everything we're planning and why we want you to be a part of it. Whatever that has been, whatever promises have been made, it looks very evident, James, that they're not coming to fruition. So I'll come to you first and then Paddy to wrap things up. Do you have a concern that Rodgers might walk, whether there's a job to go to or not, before the season's end?
No, I don't think that's the agitating factor, someone coming to take him away. I think he'll probably go next week or in the summer. I don't think he'll go in between, because there's nothing going to change in between unless the relationship with the upper management and board just dissolves. But they should be professional enough to get that across the line to May. So no, I don't see that. But yeah, I'm exactly with you. He's sitting on the beach having a great time, and Desmond comes and annoys him and says, it's going to be great, we're going to do all these things, and then he leaves that to the little people to organise, and they don't follow through on it. So it's not because someone's going to take him; it's because he's just had enough. The issue will be really when I think Rodgers goes, even if we win the league. But when Rodgers goes, he would be resigning, not being fired. So obviously compensation and all that stuff in your contract. He'll just say, no problem at all. Don't get me compensation. I'll see what money I can make out of my book, and it'll be some book.
Yeah, maybe so. Paddy, your own take on that? As James says, Brendan was potentially off to sip pina coladas on the beach somewhere and somehow get drawn back into this project. A lot of folk have questioned it from day one. Why is he returning? What's the motivator? All that kind of stuff. I was behind it. I think he's a talented coach, but it's clear that several things aren't right at this moment in time. Do you fear that he'll walk before the end of the season?
No. Don't think he will. No, I think he goes and wins the league. I do. I think that, he's an egomaniac. And I think that, we've seen what happened when he didn't get his way the first time round. We still produced a really, really strong season. And it was more just that if you're comfortable with that window, that Ollie Burke window, that Timo Weah window, and that's what you're giving me. He says, I'm leaving you a strong enough team to go and win a treble again, which it did. But he left because he wanted to and he felt that he had to. Did I agree with it? Absolutely not. But for me, he's someone that will leave when it's time to leave. And actually, I don't think he's the kind of guy that would go and win the league and then just say, right, I'm away at the end of the season. He's said stuff to Celtic fans along the lines of he wants to progress more in Europe. I don't think better than the Champions League campaign for last season is better than us in Europe. I think he's a man that will really, really just try and look to see everything that he can do. Is he up against it? It looks like it a little bit, but we're hoping and we need to just have a bit of belief that the board are putting things in place. I think we're starting to see some of the deadwood getting moved on this window. Is that forward-thinking planning? Time will tell, but I don't think Rodgers leaves for this season.
I actually think all options could be on the table. I think he could see out his 3-year deal. He could walk tomorrow. He could walk at the end of the season by winning the league or by losing the league or anything else in between. I think there's just so much going on just now behind the scenes, and none of us will ever be privy to the conversations between Rodgers and the Lawwells or Rodgers and Dermot Desmond or Michael Nicholson, who have not mentioned a lot, by the way. And I'd like to maybe see a bit more of Michael Nicholson at this moment in time. But, there's all sorts going on behind the scenes. But what you're seeing now is Brendan Rodgers starting to get a bit ratty, maybe, in his post-match press conferences. I don't know if I can't wait, it's the right term, but I'm intrigued as to what Brendan Rodgers is going to come out with tomorrow. He'll be speaking to press ahead of the visit to Pittodrie, and it could be very revealing, because you cannot tell me, unless, as I say, Celtic pull rabbits out the hat here, you cannot tell me he's going to be pleased with Adam Ida and Nicholas Kuhn as 2 of the 4 quality players he's mentioned. He just cannot possibly be pleased with what's getting served up on him. So, listen, we could go on all night, and there's lots to cover. What we will be doing, I've mentioned before, I'm doing a transfer special tomorrow, 12:30 with Anthony Joseph, Sky Sports News. Hopefully there's some incomings to talk about. But even if there's not, there's so much going on in terms of, players in, players out, moves that Celtic have tried to make and failed, guys that are unhappy, and all the detail on what's happened behind the scenes at the transfer window. So, probably not the cheeriest of recordings, but it'll be an interesting one with Anthony tomorrow at 12:30. But as we wrap this one up, James, I'll come to you first. Your final thoughts. Remember, we've got a game at Aberdeen that we were meant to be talking about. So your final thoughts ahead of the trip to Pittodrie and just your general feeling at the moment.
Back the team, sack the board. That's it.
Back the team, sack the board. But we can't sack the board, eh? That's an unrealistic ambition.
Enough feet.
Yeah. Back the team, sack the board. Paddy, your own final comments ahead of this one.
I think no matter where we come out for from this transfer window, we know it's been a bit of a shambles. I think even if you go and sign 2 or 3 players in the final day, you know, it's still been a really, really poor window from us, no matter the calibre of what we bring in. I'll support the team up to the very end, always, and I think that we'll get behind them. I think tomorrow, no matter what the pressure is, I think it will be a bit of a rallying call from Rodgers in terms of getting the fans on side. I think he needs that. I think the team needs that. And we'll see how they kick on. We're supporters. We need to kind of push ahead. Those that are sitting at the top will get a message sent to them. Absolutely. I think that fans won't sit on this. I think the fans will protest, in my opinion. And I think rightly so. I just think it's been poor mismanagement. I think of maybe 3 successful transfer windows in the last 10 years. You know, like ones that we've been really, really sure about and brought in quality. And I just think that is disgraceful. And yeah, things need to change there 100%.
Yeah, Paddy, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Thanks, of course, to everyone that's joined us here tonight, particularly those who have joined in the comments. Even Martin, I understand Martin's frustration, and there's a lot going on among Celtic supporters, so we really appreciate all the contributions there. Thanks to if you've been listening in podcast format. As I say, we've got a couple of podcasts coming up. So tomorrow afternoon, we'll have that episode between myself and Anthony Joseph of Sky Sports News. And then shortly after the game on Saturday night, we'll do another live to catch all the post-match reaction from Pittodrie. So in the meantime, for myself, James and Paddy, thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you again